Good evening, Cherries fans, and welcome to this latest opposition preview show here on Up the Cherries in all departments. Now, before I do welcome on my very special guest, here's a little bit about our sponsors, Dental on the Banks. Find out what they can do for you. Visit dentalonthebanks.co.uk. Now, of course, last time out, we got a favourable result against Wolves up at Molineux, winning 1-0. Of course, following that game up, we have got the visit from Manchester City. Probably not the sort of game that you want to go on a little bit of a run after a good result against Wolverhampton Wanderers. To preview this game, we do have a very, very special guest. And it is a pleasure to welcome onto the show from the 1894 podcast and also the Big Six podcast, Hugh Murray. Good evening, Hugh. How are you doing, mate?
I'm good, mate. Thanks very much for having me on. Looking forward to this game. It's an opportunity for us to bounce back a little bit.
Excellent. And it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. So, we'll discuss the 1894 podcast as well as your work on the Big Six. But actually, let's go to a recent game against one of the Big Six. And of course, the big competitors this season for that title, Arsenal, who you did beat. Firstly, in your own words, what did you make of that game? And when Saka scored that penalty to bring it back to 1-1, did you think that Arsenal might have gone on to win that game?
Well, first of all, I was at the game. I was at the game in the away, and weirdly, there was this overall sense of confidence going into that game. You know, considering everything that had happened to the club in the week prior to it. You know, the FFP charges we're all aware of, the Villa result, which was a great performance. It was one of the best first halves we'd seen from Manchester City in terms of, you know, style of play and motivation and enthusiasm and all that kind of thing. The hunger looked there. So going to the Emirates, Arsenal off the back of their poorest run of the season. There's no denying that. We thought it was a great opportunity for us to go down there and stamp our authority and just remind them a little bit that, you know, we are the experienced old dogs in this race and you're new on the block when it comes to title races right now, and we're not going to be a pushover. I mean, Arsenal, the way I viewed it was they've had everything their own way this season and they deserved it. They've been absolutely excellent, you know, right up until the last few weeks, and they needed to... They hadn't really tasted that little bit of a humbling that maybe Liverpool had or we've had in recent years, where something goes against you or you have a bad result. How do you bounce back from that? And they decided to rotate their team in the FA Cup game against us a few weeks before. And they said, listen, we have bigger fish to fry. And I said, right, fair enough. It's not the way we would approach it. It's not the way we have approached it in recent years, because we know from experience in these title races that, for me anyway, it's actually within your interest to win your cup games. I think in the grand scheme of things, it's within your interest, because you don't want your teammates or your players coming in on a Monday morning having won 10 games in a row, but then they've lost one. It's a new taste. You know, they've tasted an L, a bit of a humbling, and all of a sudden the confidence is a little bit damaged. I mean, they are human. There is a psychology element to this, if you ask me. And then they go on a bad run. You know, they lose to Everton, they draw with Brentford. We come to town off the back of the siege mentality we've all built up. And listen, we had 36% possession in that whole game. against Arsenal. That's the lowest any Pep Guardiola Manchester City team has ever had. But by God, I do feel we stamped our authority on them. Small things like Kevin De Bruyne pushing Arteta, Diaz getting stuck into their attackers, Haaland bullying their attackers. We went down and reminded them firmly that we are still here. Like, we're still here. We may not be as consistent as we've always been, but we're still here and we're going to apply pressure on you. Now, I said before that game that I don't think who wins that game will determine who wins the Premier League. And I said it after too. The next show I did after, I said, I don't think we've won the Premier League. We went and drew to Forest. I said, I think both teams will drop more points between now and the end of the season. We didn't win the league at the Emirates and we didn't lose it in Nottingham Forest. I just think we're in for a crazy ride. When that pressure kicks in for Arsenal, even further down the line in the league, when you're playing against the likes of Bournemouth, maybe, who are in a relegation battle and every point matters for them, how do Arsenal handle that pressure? And then for City, it's a matter of getting rid of that inconsistency and getting back into that old Manchester City title race form. So it was a good sign, that game, that we still have that old dog in us. We need to see that as fans, but we need that consistently now.
Of course, you've got a shirt behind you of Alpha Inga Haaland, and an impressive shirt from years and years and years ago. But of course, you've now got Erling at the club, and he's been outstanding. He's scored, and to be honest, he could break all sorts of records this season. But at the same time, there's been that little bit of inconsistency, that defeat against Brentford, for example. And I don't think we've ever seen that from Man City, especially not in the past couple of years. City have been quite consistent. Do you feel that this is the most exciting City side to watch, or do you feel that there is those inconsistencies, and where are they coming from?
There's definitely inconsistencies, and there's a big word that I'm going to throw out that I don't think as City fans from rivals were allowed use, and that's transition. It's simply, Craig, it's transition simply. Because we have Pep Guardiola, because we brought in Haaland, and we still have the great players that we've had over the years, your Gundos, Bernardos, De Bruyne's, Diaz, Foden. It's still a great squad, but there's absolutely no hiding from the fact that we're transitioning from one style of play to a very different style of play. I mean, Pep, since he's come in, has adapted multiple times, to the Premier League. He's changed our style of play. You went from my personal favorite front three, the most exciting was Sané, Sterling, and Aguero. I thought they were electric to watch. Then we transitioned into that false nine, and now we're transitioning back to a more traditional sort of striker. And you've got a team around the traditional striker and Haaland who aren't used to playing with them. Listen, the numbers Haaland is putting up, or the numbers he has put up, are absolutely outrageous. He's on 32 goals in 32 games. This is the first time since game week 4 that Haaland has the same amount of goals that he's played games. And for me, the team are still getting used to playing with Haaland. Haaland's still getting used to playing with the team. And if these are the kind of numbers he's putting up before it's fully clicked, I think it's quite scary for the Premier League and European football down the line. But as far as this season goes, it's not exciting. I'm not going to lie. For the first time this season, I did a video last night on my own channel. I said, this is boring football we're watching. It's not exhilarating. It wouldn't get you off your seat. I mean, we've had moments of it, glimpses of it that we want to see. The excitement, United 6-3, Arsenal 3-1, Liverpool in the Carabao, these kind of games. But overall, it's there's no enthusiasm to get Haaland on the ball, and I can tell it's frustrating the life out of him. I mean, I've been at a lot of away games this season where we've suffered. Tottenham away, United away, and we're not playing those balls. We're not playing to his strengths, and that's what's frustrating. There's no risk-taking. Everybody wants to retain and rinse the ball out to the winger, sideways, backwards. Something has to change. Pep needs to change up the tactics a little bit, tell the players to play with more freedom and express themselves, look to get the big fella on the ball, because I think yourself, Craig, if you give that guy 5 chances, he's going to score at least 2 or 3 of them. And we're just not doing that. We're just not doing that. So it's really frustrating from a City's fan perspective, but we've enough faith in Pep Guardiola. We've done this before to fix it up.
Of course, the big aim for Pep this season is going to be winning that Champions League. But there could easily be a treble on the cards of the FA Cup, of course, the Champions League and the Premier League as well. Do City fans believe that could happen?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we like to think that it could happen, but we're not playing and we haven't shown anywhere enough the consistent signs that we can do something like that. I mean, I think we can win the Champions League. It's a big ask. I think there's better teams in the competition right now. I mean, I watched Real Madrid on Tuesday completely dismantle Liverpool. I've watched Bayern Munich play in Paris, looking really solid and comfortable. And these teams, on their day, if they play to their best ability and we play like we did last night in Leipzig, I'd fancy them to beat us. But with that said, Haaland was brought in to be the difference. This team does have experience. There's a huge amount of pressure on us to go on and win the competition. I think we can win the Premier League. I think Arsenal will crack up more. I just do. I believe they'll drop more points. I think a young, inexperienced Arsenal team, I just don't see a world where they go on, a 10, 15 game winning streak now. I think teams like yourself, I will be looking at and saying, Bournemouth could take a point off Arsenal, maybe even nick a win in some mad world, because yourself, those matches when you're in a relegation battle are absolutely crazy. And I know that from experience. I don't want to be going to Bournemouth or Everton or Leeds away in the middle of a title race. Like it's horrible. In terms of the FA Cup, yeah, you need a bit of luck in the draw. I mean, it's only really ourselves, Tottenham and United are the big hitters left in the competition. So I mean, listen, every season now, people talk about City quadruple, treble, and this, that. And we've done some, the Formidables and, the Centurions and all that kind of thing. But I don't think this City team is quite ready to achieve that level of greatness. Although I think we can win silverware this season. It just remains to be seen which one.
Let's go back to, of course, something that has been in the news recently. And I've got my own opinions on this. And that's, of course, the FFP charges. There's over 100 that are being levelled at Manchester City at the moment. Of course, there was the issues with UEFA some time ago. As a City fan, firstly, do you feel that that's having a negative effect on the team as it stands at the moment? But secondly, what is your reaction to all these charges?
I suppose to answer your first question, in short, no, I don't think it has had a negative impact on the team. I mean, that week it happened was absolutely crazy. I got off a plane coming back from Tottenham away. I landed back in Dublin, and I was hanging. I was really, really hungover. And I open up my phone in Dublin Airport, and I see City have been charged with this crazy amount of charges, whatever. And I'm going, right, how are we going to bounce back from this? It was a lot of confusion, a lot of upset naturally, but then you kind of decide, right, you're going to have to kind of meet this head on and make the best of the situation. So first of all, what happened was us as fans banded together and said, right, we've not been proven guilty of anything just yet. The board are saying we have irrefutable evidence, which means it's evidence that will firmly clear our name and give us innocence. So we have to take that at face value. The board have done very little wrong. In fact, they've done way more good than they have bad since they took over this club. They've been an absolute dream. My granddad and my family, who are following City a lot longer than I am, they've told me all the stories of the darker years. And I was only really coming of an age to consciously understand football when the takeover happened. So I've lived a great life as a City fan, trophy after trophy, great players. So I'm in the position right now where until we're proven guilty and the board have clear and obviously messed up, I'm going to defend them. Then the next thing was the manager did that famous press conference before the Villa game. He came out all guns blazing, defended the club, said he's not leaving. Some powerful quotes came out of that, which just that siege mentality that City fans have been talking about became a thing. And the players then reacted against Villa, players reacted at Arsenal. So I don't think it's affected the performance of the players. Which the second question was?
And secondly, what did you make of all these charges that have been levelled against Manchester City? Do you feel that there is some wrongdoing, or do you feel that they are grossly unfair? Because my view, and I'll give you my view, is you look at Chelsea and what they're doing and the money they're spending, and spending over 100 million on one player. You look at what Abramovich did to them. Of course, Manchester United were doing, making a lot of moves as well. I know that they don't like the Glazers, but at the same time, they were spending a lot of money. What do you, as City fans, what do you make of all these charges levelled against the club?
I mean, first of all, like, I'm not a legal expert, so I didn't want to dive too deep and try claim this and unravel that and bring up the laws and the handbooks and that kind of thing, because I'm a football fan. I don't know about that, even though, listen, the football world became judge, jury, and executioner that 48-hour period and decided City were guilty, and all this has already happened. It's clear and obvious the optics don't look great. I don't care about the optics. With all due respect, you don't know, I don't know. Joe from Stockport doesn't know, and neither does Dave from Essex. None of us actually have a clue. People started to talk about our cast case, the UEFA case back in 2020, and they said, oh, you got off on the technicality of a time bar. And I didn't actually know myself the ins and outs of it until I looked into it recently. And I read the press release, which said City were exonerated from disguising funds from Etihad Airways, but they were fined for the lack of cooperation. Now, people dived into that and made their own assumptions. But that's the nature of football, isn't it? People make their own ideas. We're in a society where everybody's an expert on everything. But in terms of these charges, like I said, I don't know a huge amount about the ins and outs of them, but I've looked a little bit at some of them. It seems, there's multiple charters all umbrellaed under sort of the same thing. Mancini's payments is all umbrellaed under, like, that accounts for about 30 of the charges. So it's not essentially 115, 120 separate individual things, but within one breaking of the rule, City broke 30 rules, if you kind of get what I'm getting at here. So that's the way I look at it. Obviously, it's very coincidental that this happened 48 hours before this white paper thing was meant to become a reality in the independent regulators. There's conspiracies that that these heritage clubs, your Uniteds and Liverpools and Arsenals, want rid of Manchester City, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but these are the things that City fans and the football world are acknowledging. So it's a confusing time, but like I said, until in this country we have a thing where it's innocent till proven guilty, and City have every right to that, and they're going to fight this case. They welcome the case, as they've said. So I hope we're cleared. I hope we're innocent naturally. If we're not and we're found guilty, it's kind of a bridge I'll cross when I get to it. And then I'll start to ask the questions of why did you make those mistakes? Why did you cheat? Who was the culprit? Who was the spearheading these decisions? And then we have to start name calling and that sort of thing. So it's just going to be a process that it could be anywhere between 6 months to 4 years by the sound of it.
Just going back to an earlier point as well you made about Manchester City's dark days, and it leads on quite nicely to the next question as well. Of course, back in 1998-99 season, we finished 3 points behind Manchester City. Of course, Man City were promoted, but that was in the old Division 2. It's been quite a rise since then, hasn't it? It was.
I wasn't born for that.
I remember it. I do remember. I'm showing my age now. But of course, there has been such a dramatic rise, even from the mid-noughties, and those days under the likes of Kevin Keegan for Manchester City. How exciting has that trip been up to the point when Pep Guardiola actually took over?
It's just been, it's almost like a blur in a way. I mean, like, I'm from Dublin in Ireland, where absolutely everybody supports Liverpool or Man United. And I was the one kid in school who'd come in and tell everybody else about Stephen Ireland and Shay Given and Craig Bellamy when they're all talking about Wayne Rooney and Van Persie and Gerrard and the like. So I could only really dream at that age. Like, my granddad would say things to me like, maybe someday we'll get a day out in Wembley and all that kind of thing. And the takeover happens. You're buying players like Robinho. You're buying, really, big names that would never have come beforehand. You win your first FA Cup. You bring in players like David Silva, Company, Aguero, and these things, and they become pillars of the future of the club. They take the club from that, new wealthy club to, right, they're actual competitors, and they're going to be here for the foreseeable future. Mancini wins that first league after 44 years, and the rest is sort of history. Pellegrini comes in and builds on that, and then the big one that takes us to that elite level is Pep Guardiola comes in. And obviously, I was about 16 when Pep came in, so I was really starting to get into my football. I was really starting to watch it consciously and try to understand the game. So it's just been beautiful for me that all of my young adult years I've had Pep winning Centurions, Formidables, beating Liverpool twice by a point in Champions League finals. And I've been fortunate to have a season ticket for most of, I think, the years Pep Guardiola's been here. So I've seen some of the best football the Premier League's ever seen, some of the best players. And listen, long may it last. It's been a dream. Like, I don't claim to have been there for the dark years, like I said, but I listen to the older fans and
Yeah.
family members who tell me all about it, and they say you're so lucky that your young adult years you're watching and living through this, because what they had to go through was tough. Like my good friend Big Steve, obviously there's no one more Man City than Big Steve, and he tells the stories of when he went to this place away and the dreams that they had, and he's now living that dream. So it is a fairy tale story, but fairy tale stories don't sit well with everybody, as we've seen in recent years. So listen, it's been great, man.
Well, hopefully, and this is one thing that, and why I mentioned that is it's something that we're dreaming of now, because of course we've recently been bought out. Of course, we've spent more money than we ever have done in this transfer window just gone, and it's going to take a while to get there, but you never know. Could it happen to Bournemouth?
I mean, it's tough now. It's definitely tough now with all the latest rules. I mean, we kind of just missed that sort of FFP clamping down a little bit. Like, my thoughts on FFP are very unsavory. I believe it was brought in to stop clubs like Bournemouth, to stop clubs like Blackpool or Reading or Charlton being bought out and having a dream of doing what Manchester City did, giving you the right to go, wow, we can go out and spend some money, flex our muscles, and maybe we can do something crazy. That's the way I look at it. It was we were told when it was proposed that FFP was brought in to save us from ourselves, stop the clubs going extinct, stop them doing dodgy business that will ruin the future of the clubs, and basically keep the league intact. But in my opinion, it's just set up so that the big boys can spend their big money, and people like us in the past, before we were taken over, or when we were newly taken over, or you in your current position now, you're not allowed really spend that money, because you're not really allowed to try and challenge your Uniteds, Arsenals, and Liverpools, because they're the heritage clubs and they need to be where they always be. So in a way, it'll probably take you a lot longer if it is to happen, but it's tougher. It's definitely tougher now with the FFP rules. So I don't know. We'll have to see.
Is there any players this season as well for Manchester City which have been disappointing? Because when you watch Match of the Day, you see so much talent on the show. When City are playing somebody, and it doesn't matter who it is, okay, yeah, take Brentford aside, the talent that Manchester City have got, really does shine through. But for City fans, I guess because you're used to that, it probably highlights when somebody's not doing particularly well. Is there anybody who City fans have felt has been quite disappointing?
I think a lot of them, if not most of them, have been below their best, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
We have very high standards at City for our top players, the likes of De Bruyne, the likes of Bernardo, the likes of Cancelo, even now he's gone to Bayern Munich, and none of them have really hit that real high that we know over the years. I mean, De Bruyne's his stats would show otherwise, but the reality is with De Bruyne, he's not been his best this season. He's not looked his best at all. We've seen very few glimpses of De Bruyne looking like vintage Kevin De Bruyne.
Yeah.
Gundogan, they're talking about giving him a new contract. I'm not so sure if he still has it in him. Bernardo, we know, doesn't want to be at the club anymore. He's been saying for years he wants to leave, and this summer I reckon they'll pull the cord on that and let him go. I think there's probably a clear out on the horizon. There's going to be a lot of names maybe unexpectedly leaving, a lot of new names coming in. We're linked with a lot of really exciting players, and I think that's needed. I think a freshen up, a refreshing of the squad is absolutely needed. I think it's only natural. Listen, I can't put a huge amount of blame on them because of what they've given us over the years. So many great moments and memories that
Yeah.
it's only natural that the hunger levels aren't the exact same. But yeah, listen, some players definitely haven't been at their best, but that's not to say that they still can't get there. There's still plenty of time this season.
And of course, you do have a former Cherry in the ranks and somebody who is one of the nicest guys in football. And I really do mean that. One of the nicest guys in football, Nathan Ake. Um, do you think he's got a future at Manchester City?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. He's
Mhm.
probably been our most consistent defender this season. I mean that genuinely. He's been excellent. He really has. I mean, he found it tough his first season. He didn't get a huge amount of game time, and he had to kind of choose or take his moments and take his opportunities, and he never really failed. I mean, I can't really think of a single game where Nathan Ake played, where I said, yeah, he wasn't great today, or he's below what we need. People criticized us for paying 40 million for him, but as far as I'm concerned, he's been worth every penny. I mean, this season, like, he's had some tough tests up against Saka, playing Manchester Derby, and these kind of things, and whatever he doesn't offer going forward, defensively, you're guaranteed a solid game from Nathan Ake. And that saved us on a lot of occasions this season. Centre half, left back. He's become a bit of a left back for us, and he's been a revelation. So I think he absolutely does. I think we will bring in a proper left back. I mean, we're due one at this stage. It's been 7 years since we signed one. But Nathan Ake absolutely has a future. I'm a big Nathan Ake fan.
So he's not going to be coming back here then?
Not anytime soon, I wouldn't think, no.
No, fair enough, mate. Fair enough. Of course, you signed Kalvin Phillips as well, who, I thought was a great bit of business at the time. But how's he done so far?
Listen, I'm a really big fan of Kalvin Phillips, but that's based off his Leeds performances and mainly that England 2020 or the Euro 2020 run where he got player of the tournament for England that year. I thought he was a terrific player, but in his last season at Leeds, he was plagued with a bad injury. As soon as he came to City, it was kind of injury after injury. He's been on the physiotherapist table for a lot of his time at City, and he's had really few minutes since he arrived at the club. But I'm not ready to throw in the towel. I've seen journalists suggesting City want to let him go. I don't think that's true. I think the way Pep Guardiola operates, and it's quite clear, is that he's willing to give everybody, regardless of who they are, a season to get a feel for the club, get a feel for the team, and see how they kind of bed in. And I think he's going to give that exact thing to Kalvin Phillips. I mean, when Rodri first arrived, we were all kind of questioning Rodri, saying, this 24-year-old from Atletico, is he actually going to be Fernandinho's successor? Not too sure. He's not showing the signs. And many others likewise. And look at him now. I think it's just be patient with Kalvin. I think he's going to struggle to get minutes this season for the rest of the season, I'm being honest, because every single game we have now is a cup final. And while Rodri's fit, Rodri's going to play. So Phillips is just going to have to bide his time. And if he does get opportunity, really take it. But I think he's a terrific footballer. I think you probably do too, based off what you've seen in years gone by.
Yes.
But I feel for the guy. I feel for the guy with the injury issues.
And the last player I wanted to mention, another very, very nice man, Jack Grealish, and what he's done as well for charities and also kids, of course, with disabilities. But I guess is he still, like we see it for England, is he still more impactful, do you feel, off the bench? Or do you feel that, he can start a game and have a real impetus on that?
For me, this season, as far as attackers go, Grealish has possibly been the most consistent, especially since the return after the World Cup. I think, he is a Manchester City player now. He looks like a Manchester City player, and he's got the goals and assists to back it up. Jackie G&A, I call him now, because he's getting them, and that was everyone's big criticism. Listen, I'm a Jack Grealish fanboy. Anybody who follows my channel and watches it regularly, all throughout last season, from the moment he arrived through the door, I defended that guy tooth and nail. I'm a big fan of the way he carries himself as a person, the way he plays the game. And yourself, if you watch any of his interviews and all his off-field and what he does off the pitch for people with disabilities or kids with disabilities and things you don't even hear about. Like, there's a lot of things that don't get reported in the media that I've heard about Jack Grealish that are just make him a great guy in my head. So I've defended him. I'm well aware that last season he didn't hit the heights that people wanted him to purely because of that 100 million price tag. But I saw enough to say, right, give him the next season. And I'm pretty sure he'll improve. And he said it at the end of last season. He was like, listen, I won't lie. And I think it took a lot of courage for him to say this because most footballers wouldn't. But he said, I was intimidated. I was a bit nervous of making mistakes. I was intimidated by Pep. I'm at a bigger club but more expectations and, the price tag. I didn't want to make mistakes. I need to take the shackles off and shoot more and all these kind of things. And this season he's done that. He's dropping deep. He's being aggressive. He's getting his goals and assists. He's linking up with Haaland more than other players are. I don't want to see a team, week in, week out now that doesn't have Jack Grealish starting on the left wing. With that said, I think the best front three we have is Grealish, Haaland, Foden. But through Foden's injuries and that thing, we've had to play Mahrez, who's done well. But I think that the diversity of Grealish, Haaland, Foden, what they all three of them offer individually, will make for a scary front three. And we haven't seen that front three start. Well, we saw it against Nottingham Forest, but the last time before that was the 6-3 against United. So I think there's a lot to come from Grealish. I think he's been absolutely terrific, and I think he's going to continue to be terrific.
Could we see that against us?
Yeah, the thing is, the thing is with teams like Bournemouth, who I would imagine you'll set up with a low enough block, and you'll do your best to keep us out for as long as possible, similar to what Nottingham Forest did, and you may try nick a goal then or whatever. They don't give Grealish a lot of space. I find that everybody who plays against us doubles and triples up on Jack Grealish, which it does leave more space for your Haalands and Mahrez, which they need to capitalize on. But listen, you don't know. Jack's playing with a lot of confidence right now, and he's looking great. So I wouldn't put it past him. He's on a streak now for goals and assists. So hopefully.
Yeah. Um, and actually, that does raise another very quick question as well, because of course Gary O'Neill has been under pressure at Bournemouth. And one thing that I've noticed is, especially against Nottingham Forest and against Brighton, we seem to have control of those two games until the last 10 minutes when we went too defensive and allowed teams to play in front of us. We did that against Liverpool as well and ended up getting beat 9-0. That was for the whole game. We did it against Arsenal where we sat, too deep and Arsenal picks us off at will for the first 10 minutes. What we have employed recently is the old Eddie Howe mentality of, and you've probably seen it against Newcastle, where we do seem to go forward and seem to be quite bold in our attacks, but maybe leave some gaps at the back. Is that a way that we could get to Manchester City, or would the more defensive aspect be probably what we need to do?
I think, but both those type of setups you've spoke about there, they have had their successes against City. I mean, more recently we've seen Brentford, Everton, Tottenham, United, all of them do that sort of low block and then pounce on the counter with pace. Absolutely, but teams that do go toe to toe with us, like you said, Newcastle absolutely did it. Southampton have done it in years gone by. Palace have done it in years gone by, where they say, we're not going to sit back. We're not going to allow you to dominate the midfield. We're going to meet you head on, and it's going to be, who could punch for punch, who comes out on top kind of thing. But it's high risk, high reward, that style of play. You'll either get a 3-2 win over us because you'll leave gaps in behind which we would exploit, or else you could get slapped up 5-0. I mean, Nottingham Forest tried to do it earlier on the Etihad, but they ended up 3 or 4-0 down by half time, and they had to go back to that low block and damage limitation. So, like I said, it's high risk, high reward. I personally prefer playing against that toe to toe where you'll come and meet us in the middle, because I think we can exploit if you give us a space. It's the teams that do set up with a low block and have really fast wingers that'll counter at us. They scare me. They scare me the most. So I think it's interesting, whatever way you decide to set up. But it's like I said, if you're willing to take the risk, you might get the reward.
Well, it's going to be interesting, and I honestly don't know how Gary O'Neill is going to set up because, like I say, the low block has failed so far this season for him, whereas going to toe-to-toe with teams seems to have worked a little bit more. But of course, this is against Manchester City. Before we do go into our predictions, I am going to make you full screen for this as well, Hugh. Please do tell everybody about the 1894 podcast, but also the Big Six as well.
Yeah, so the 1894 is my YouTube channel, set up about a year and a half ago now, I want to say, and we're up to just under 6,000 subscribers, I want to say. We're getting close to 6,000, so that's just a channel I go on, like my own one, where I give my opinions on what's going on in the world of Manchester City and the Premier League in general and Champions League in general, match previews, live streams, guests, reviews, transfer talk. Every day there's pretty well something there. And the Big Six show is the Premier League, top six, Big Six speaks for itself. And I represent Manchester City on that show. Fantastic show, big audience, great community, hosted by Turkish of AFTV, obviously a fantastic host. So, yeah, I mean, if you're interested in that sort of thing, even if you're a Bournemouth fan, but you want to see what the Big Six are up to on a daily basis, definitely come and check that out.
Well, the links will all be below. You might have to change it to the Big Seven because of Newcastle next season.
Yeah, we've had that conversation. We should get Tottenham. Get rid of Tottenham, I reckon.
Or it could be the Big Eight if we spend loads and loads and loads of money, do up Dean Court, and make it, well, something that we can never even dream of, to be fair. But I think I might be dreaming a little bit there. Too much.
I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it happen. We'll get you.
Honestly, well, if it does, do get me involved. There we are,
I'll keep you in
Turkish as
mind.
well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Turkish, get me involved. I'm coming on for the big eight. It might be a
Yeah.
couple of years, so mind. Um, right, we've got to discuss how this game is gonna go. We always do predictions. I personally don't have a clue how we're gonna set up, whether or not we're gonna go for the low block, like you say. To be honest, since speaking to you, Hugh, it's actually put doubts in my mind if we're going to go for that to try and contain City, or if we are just going to go toe to toe and see what happens. If we do get thumped 5-0, it is a bonus game for us after all. But how do you think this is going to go?
I think it's going to be a tough one. Like I said back at the very start of the show, that these relegation teams, they're not easy places to go to. I mean, there's some part of me kind of believes I'd rather play against an Arsenal, on a week to week basis and just have a hit out for the title race every week. Because I think we can get the better of them. But these are nasty games. These are nasty, nasty games. I mean, we went to West Ham the second last day of last season, and they got a draw off us and put the fear of God into us that maybe we'd blown the Premier League. So I think it's going to be tough, but City need to bounce back. Not the best performance in Leipzig last night. Got the draw. That's fine. Hopefully, take them back to the Etihad. You'd have to fancy us there. Nottingham Forest. Chance after chance wasn't clinical enough. So I'd like to think that if we create those chances in Bournemouth, we'll be more clinical. It's a hard one to call because you don't know what kind of City will turn up. You could get the City that beat Arsenal 3-1. You get the City that beat United 6-3. Or you could get the City that lost to Brentford or lost to Everton as well, and these kind of games. But I'm going to back the team. I'm going to back that the mentality is still there, the siege is still underway, and the players still have that hunger. So that's the way I see it panning out.
Well, I am going to go, to be honest, I'm going to go for a Man City win. The main reason being is just the quality that you've got. But I think we will go toe to toe. I think we will score. Um, and I think probably a 3-1 win for City. But if we can get even a point, it's a bonus game for us. That's the way we see it here. And, if we can get anything at all from Manchester City, it'd just be amazing to get something on the board. We haven't, to be honest, we haven't got anything from you so far. So it's about time, isn't it?
Listen, if I was in your boots, genuinely, and I said this on the stream the other night, I'd be saying any team in the Premier League right now should not be afraid of Manchester City. Like you shouldn't be looking at us as the city of old and this juggernaut that's going to come down and run riot down in the seaside of Bournemouth on the weekend. Because unfortunately, we're not quite that right now. I think we will get back to that next season, and when the transition is fully finished or a few more refreshments, like I said. But currently, based off form this season and teams that have taken points off us, Bournemouth have every chance of nicking a point off us and or maybe nicking a win. Who knows? Depends. Like if you get a goal early and the crowd get behind the team and all of a sudden we crumble a little bit like we have done, it could be a long day for us. So that's why City fans and myself, have been saying we need to approach this game like it's a Champions League final, because everybody will feel like they can get something off City. But with that said, I still have to back the team. I have to back the mentality. I have to back the manager. And I'm going to go with a 2-0 City.
2-0 City.
Jack Grealish goal.
Fair enough. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, Hugh. All the very, very best for the rest of the season. Of course, I don't think Turkish will be very happy me saying that to you, but we shall see how this title race pans out. I think there's going to be a lot more twists and turns. It's going to be between you two, though, isn't it? Man United aren't going to get in there.
United are scaring me. United are scaring me a little bit. Keep that quiet though, Craig. Don't be telling the world I said that. But United, like the thing is, Craig, United have the best form right now of the three of us. I know mathematically the table will show they're behind us, but they're playing well. They've got that character and that determination and that never say die attitude, which we saw when I went to Old Trafford that day a couple months ago. So they're there or thereabouts. Another slip up or two from both of us, and all of a sudden United are well and truly in the mix. But those bastards won't tell you that. They'll tell you they're not in a title race and it's one game at a time. So don't mind them.
Yeah, we'll keep that quiet. It's all going to be on the show. But the thing is I don't know how many Man United fans watch it, so you might be all right. But like I say, Hugh, all the very, very best for the rest of the season, and hopefully we can do this again next year. Of course, that means us staying up.
Yeah, I hope so, man. Listen, thank you very much for having me on. I hope the viewers in your community enjoyed the show. I hope they all liked the video because obviously every like really does help the channel grow. I hope you guys all subscribe as well. Is 1,000 your next big goal? I had a quick
It
look
is,
there.
yeah. 1,000's the
Yeah,
next big goal. So fingers crossed we can get there as soon as possible.
I'll share it around. I'll tell people in my community to come and check it out and subscribe and that sort of thing. We can hopefully get you to 1,000. So listen, thank you very much for having me on. Best of luck with everything except for Sunday, and we'll definitely do it again sometime soon.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Hugh. And thank you everybody for joining us on this show. Please do remember to hit the like, the subscribe, the bell button, and do share this video everywhere. Please do check out our previous interviews as well that we've done with former players. We had Charlie Daniels on the show. Of course, the man that scored that goal, one of the most remarkable goals at Dean Court. I'm sure everybody will agree. We've also had other players on, so Steve Fletcher. We've had Harry on as well, and lots more. So please do check out the channel and hit that subscribe button. It does mean the world to us. And like Hugh was saying, we're not far from 1,000 now, so it'd be nice to get there. But until the next show, up the cherries, and we'll see you then. Thank you for joining us.